I had to over prepare. Will be overkill for most of you. Is this excessive? Am I overthinking this too much? Hello and welcome to tejedoraknits. My name is Gladys. I am a knitter based out of Southern Nevada here in the United States, and today I have a video that I have been waiting for such a long time to make, and the time has finally come. How I'm preparing for my very first ever Fiber Festival. So I am incredibly excited to be finally going to my very first ever Fiber Festival, which will be Flock Fiber Fest in Seattle in the month of August. And I am over the moon. So of course I had to prepare. I had to over prepare. I know this will be overkill for most of you, but you never know. Maybe there are some good tips in here, and please, if you have been to fiber festivals yourself and you have recommendations and tips for me, I am all ears. Please leave them all below in the comments so that I can be as prepared as I can, because I want to make sure that I make the most out of it and enjoy as much as possible. So let's get into it. So the reason that I feel like I have gone so in depth to prepare for this festival is because living in Southern Nevada, there's not a big knitting yarn community. I don't really have local yarn store. I have one tiny little local yarn store, but there's no yarn community or festivals near me. So, and whenever I do travel, I can't necessarily always be traveling just for the sake of a yarn festival. So this one is very much like a girls' weekend. I'm going with my best friend. She has been to Flock before, but this is really going to be a girls' weekend for us, and we planned it around the timing of Flock so that way we could take advantage of that as well. So yarn festivals, I guess, are just not something that happens very commonly in my life. After Flock, who knows when I'll ever be able to go to the next one. So I am not going to take that for granted, and I decided I would rather be prepared, over-prepared, than to be underprepared and overwhelmed when I'm there and not end up actually buying anything or enjoying the festival to the full potential. So I know myself, and by being prepared for every scenario, I can relax and go with the flow. But I can't go with the flow if I don't have a plan. So that is why I am doing all of this. I have been thinking of this for months. I have made multiple iterations of my plan. I have been also saving up for this festival for quite a few months as well. I kind of have a few different sections of how I decided to organize everything. So one, I have kind of my outline of what I want to focus on purchasing, what I do not want to purchase or let myself purchase. And then I will also be going to Bainbridge Island to visit Shop La Mercerie, and the lambing kit is on Bainbridge as well. So that is kind of one section of it, the commercial aspect of it, and then what I have planned for the Flock Fiber Festival itself for the market vendors. So I first wanted to just a couple thoughts on just like spending this much money on yarn in general. What a privilege it is to be in a position where I can not only just travel, because I feel like sometimes we forget to, and we take that for granted, but being able to travel, being able to spend money on a hobby that just brings me joy without a financial return on it, I guess, if we put it that way. I was feeling a bit guilty when I was putting together all the numbers of spending this much money, but I've kind of rephrased my perspective. What a privilege it is to be able to spend money in small businesses and support small businesses. A lot of these are women-owned, people of color, etc. So I just feel very privileged to be able to do this, and that is not lost on me. And you never know what turns life might take. This is what I can, do right now, but I'm not assuming that I'll be able to do this all the time or do it forever. So I'm enjoying the moment while it might last. But like I said, it's not lost on me that this is a privilege for sure. Okay, so first, how I'm going to divide all of this. So first I have kind of my overarching goals. My no buys, because I have a couple of those as well, my plan for Bainbridge Island, and then my plan for the market vendors. So within the market vendors, I have a few specific vendors that I want to make sure that I visit, and I do have some specifics that I would like to focus on at these vendors. I also will be going over my project plans, because I like to purchase with at least some sort of vague iteration of a plan. So I do have knitting plans that I will be using, like I'm going to call it my pattern library. I have my pattern library. So when I find a cool yarn, I can kind of see what project I want to associate it with and get the appropriate quantity. So let's start off with overarching goals. So for yarn, I want to focus on cool blends, meaning just more than the classic superwash merino. I love a superwash merino as much as the next person, but I really like a good blended yarn, whether that be silk or linen or yak or cotton. I don't know. I love blends. So that is something that I want to keep my eye out for. And of course, I want a commemorative stitch marker. That is something that I'm going to keep my eye out for, specifically the Progress Keeper type, because I only have one cute little Progress Keeper. So I want to hopefully find a couple Progress Keepers. My no buys. I don't have a ton on my no buys, but I do want to try my very best to stick to it. First off is no fiber. I am not allowed to buy any spinning fiber, any drop spindles, anything that is for spinning, because the temptation is high, and I want to in the future pursue spinning and learn how to spin and things like that. But that's just not a hobby that I can take on realistically at this time. I need to do way more research. I need to have more space. Like, there are a lot of things that need to align for me to start spinning. I will get to it at some point, but it is not going to be this year. So I am not going to buy any fiber right now. I'm not allowed. I told my best friend, like, do not let me buy any fiber, please. Another one is project bags. I don't use fancy project bags. I have my projects in like canvas totes or cute little shopping bags or things like that. But I do not want to buy any structured project bags that are like, you know, those like almost full on purse. It's just not something that I want to focus on for now, and not something that I want to invest my money in at this point. So that was a pretty easy compromise. I'm not going to buy any fancy project bags or baskets or things like that. And the last one is jewelry. There are a couple of jewelry vendors, and I've also decided I'm not going to look into any jewelry. I have some metal sensitivities when it comes to things like earrings and such. So it's just a purchase that I need to research far more in depth, and it's not something that I want to, you know, buy on impulse at a festival. So I have said no to the jewelry, fiber, and project bags. Other than that, I'm pretty flexible as to what I'm going to be kind of looking for. So those are the overarching goals. Now let's talk about my plans for Bainbridge Island. On Bainbridge Island, you know, there's two main yard shops, at least that I'm aware of. Shop La Mercerie, which is the host of Flock Fiber Festival, and the Lamb & Kid, which both of them will be vendors at the festival, but we just decided to make it a separate trip and a separate day to focus on them. So I do have a couple of purchase plans. So my sister very generously gave me a gift card from Shop La Mercerie for Christmas. She asked, like, she wanted to give me a yarn gift card, so she asked where I would like it for, and I said La Mercerie because I had the high hopes that I would be able to go to Flock this year and use it in person, and it is happening. It is happening. So I have a $100 gift card to La Mercerie, and that is honestly going to cover a lot of what I will be purchasing there. So I have two plans. One, so La Mercerie is, I believe it's called flagship store or stockist. I'm not sure what the correct term is for Durum Natura, Bisha Bouche, and Knitting for Olive. Sorry, I blanked there for a minute. Knitting for Olive I have used, I'm familiar with. You can see a couple bottles of Knitting for Olive over here. Of course, I will be taking a look at them. I am going to be doing a lot of market research at Shop La Mercerie because I would like to continue to purchase from them in the future, and there are a few yarns that I would just love to be able to see in person. I have convinced myself that I don't have to buy everything at once. It is okay. So I will be doing a lot of market research. But there are two specific purchases that I do want to go ahead and make. The first one is from Durum Natura, their yarn called Ulysse, which is a sport weight wool, non-super wash, and I want this for a very specific project for the Kerr sweater from Rebecca Clow. But I want to go rogue, and I want to steek it and make it into a full zipper cardigan. So I want to make a zipper cardigan kerr sweater. So that is my plan. So I will be purchasing, I think for my size, I need 5 balls of the main color and 1 to 2 balls of the contrast color. So if you guys have, if any of y'all have made the kerr sweater, if you could please give me your input. So for my size, which is size 2, I believe, or no, size 3, I'm sorry. The recommendation for the contrast color is 268 yards, and each ball of Durham Nature Lease has 202 yards. So I would be just about a little over 60 yards short. Should I purchase a second ball? Should I just get one, and then because it's a commercial yarn, like later on when I make it, if I need the second ball, I'll purchase it then? Should I do both of them? I don't know. If you have any suggestions on that kerr sweater, or, you know, I should probably check, like, does Rebecca cover, like, give like a buffer for her yarn estimates? I should probably look into that. But anyways, those, if I'm going to do the 6 balls, they retail for $11 each. So that should be $66. And then for that one, I do not have any color planned. So I'm just going to go off of the vibes when it comes to the colors. And then I have a second sweater quantity that I want to purchase. And it is from Bishi Bouche. It is the Le Petit Lamb's wool. So it is a fingering weight. It seems like a very fluffy, not fluffy, but a very like airy, lofty type of yarn. It has more yardage than is normal for a fingering weight. I didn't write down the yardage, I'm sorry. But that one, I have plans to pair it with this Knitting for Olive lavender color mohair. I made myself like a little yarn card to take. So I want to get it in a color that will match this Knitting for Olive mohair. And the plan that I have in mind, I'm in between two. I have thoughts about the Lyra Bird cardigan by Marzena Kolaksek or the Kathy cardigan by Rebecca Clow. I love Rebecca Clow's patterns. I love the fit, but I also really like the pattern from Marzena. So I haven't made a game time decision yet, but I need 200 grams of that fingering weight to hold with my mohair. So this is a pricey yarn for a commercial yarn, I guess. It retails for $14 for each 50-gram ball. So that will be $56. So $28 for 100 grams is, I'd say, on the higher side of a commercial yarn, but I really, really want to try that yarn. So I'm going to go for it. So those are the 2 purchases that I'm planning on making at La Mercerie. Without including like taxes and, you know, fun stuff like that, I should be planning for $122 minus my $100 gift card. So just $22, which will be incredible. And like I mentioned, I want to do a lot of market research there. Specifically from Bishi Bouche, I want to look at their Le Gros. My French is, I don't do French, I'm so sorry, but Le Gros mohair, which is more like a DK weight, fluffy, chunky mohair type of deal. I'm really intrigued on making a sweater with that yarn in the future. And from Durham Natura, I really want to take a look at their Antigone. I'm gonna say Antigone. I'm gonna go with Antigone, which is their 100% linen yarn. That would be wonderful for summer garment. The Bernice, which is their mohair, and Alice. I'm intrigued if they'll have Alice. That's a brand new yarn that came out from Durham Natura. It is a 25 linen, 75% wool. So I'm not sure if they'll have it in stock already, but I want to take a look at those. So those are my plans for La Mercerie. And then at the Lamb & Kid, I have one specific skein of yarn that I would like to make. So this skein of yarn that is hanging right over here is a skein of sport weight yarn, hand dyed in this like beautiful blue-green, cool toned variegated. And I have been thinking of a plan for it. And I have decided on the Velvet Mirror Cowl by Andrea Mowry. And that is a colorwork cowl with 1 strand of sport weight, which is what I have here, alternated with a strand of lace weight alpaca. So like a light fingering alpaca suri, I should say. It's a bit of a hard color to try and match online. So I want to take advantage and pick up a skein of the suri alpaca from Lamb & Kid. It should be, I think the base is called Birdie. and they have a really extensive color range. And I took off one of the little ties from the skein of yarn to put on my yarn card. So this is kind of what it looks up close. So I have no idea what color I'm going to pair with this, but I am pretty confident that I can find a good pairing there at the Lamb & Kid. That should retail for $33, and that is the only thing I am planning on picking up at the Lamb & Kid. So those are the plans for Bainbridge. Now let's move over to the flock market. So for the marketplace, kind of how I decided, I kind of make it a list of my preferred vendors to go to in the case that I get overwhelmed and there's just too many choices. I can kind of zone in on the brands that I know that I want to visit and pick something up from. Not to say I might not shop elsewhere. Of course, I want to visit every single booth while I'm there, but these are going to be my focuses, I guess. So I'll start with Witchfire Fibers. I love Witchfire Fibers. It is my one of my, I can't pick favorites, but it's one of my favorite hand-dyed yarn brands. I have a skein from them up here. Oh wait, it's this one right over here. So I definitely want to give Jess a visit and say hello. She has kind of hinted at a couple of things that she might take. So I have two potential interests. One is her colorway called Witchfire. I have made a garment in Witchfire before, and she has confirmed that she will be taking it again. So I really would like to pick up some more of Witchfire. It is you know what? Let me get my garment in Witchfire to show you. So I have a vest here made in Witchfire Boucle. So it's this beautiful olive color. I would love to have another garment in this color, just not in boucle. So if she has any Witchfire in a nice base, that would be a potential. Another potential is that she has kind of hinted at one of her bases. It's called Lithia Fingering, which is a 38% baby alpaca, 25% merino, 37% Pima cotton. This is what I'm referring to as like fun bases. That seems like a really fun yarn base. If she had Lithia Fingering in Witchfire, that is what I am getting. No questions asked. One of the pattern thoughts that I have that would work really well with the Lithia Fingering yarn is this is a French word, so I'm so sorry. Du sommet cardigan? I'm sure that's not how you say it, but I'll make sure to leave it here below, by Tamara Jordan. It is a DK weight, but the Lithia Fingering is a little bit of a multi-gauge yarn that would need 300 grams of the yarn. So that is a potential project for Witchfire. Another vendor that I want to stop by is Superglo. So this is in honor of my best friend. She is a Superglo queen. If we were to describe our styles, I think it's so cute. She is very much a 90s neon fanny pack rollerblade girl. And I am a earthy witch walking through the misty forest. That's how I would describe my color palette. And I love that for both of us. So I'm going to Superglo because of her. But there are a couple, I also have two things on my eye. One is she has mentioned in her stories that she will be taking sets of fluffy mini sets. So mini skeins of either mohair or Surrey alpaca in her holographic colorway, I believe it is. So it's kind of like neonish type of colors. So that is a potential. I'm very intrigued about that. She did mention the fluffy minis are going for $72 a set on her website. Another thing, if I get that, I would probably end up using them to make the Kintra sweater by Rebecca Clow in a fingering weight. So that's a potential option. She also mentioned that she's going to take her merino silk base, which is 50% silk, 50% merino. So in a fingering weight, I think that would be really nice for like a summer take. So I'll probably do one or the other. If I go for the silk merino, I'll probably do 2 skeins. That should be enough for a summer garment. So those are my, potential options for Superglo. The next vendor that I have in mind is another new one. So it is ZeeZee Textiles. I kind of found her because the owner of ZeeZee, I believe her name is Rachel, is friends with the owner of Witchfire, Jess. So I kind of found them through Instagram on that way. And I'm really excited to take a look at her offerings. She's very much of like that nature moody type of vibe, and that is what I'm here for. She has mentioned that she will be taking a yak silk base, which I think is really interesting. I think it is 60% merino, 20% yak, 20% silk in a fingering and a DK. So I'm really intrigued by that. It is a bit of a pricier base. The skein retails for, on her website, for $35 instead of like your classic $30 to $32. As far as colorways, she has given us a couple of hints. She has released a sock set that has the colorways oyster shell and pearl. I'll leave a picture above. And I really, really like those colors, especially the oyster shell. Like that is my perfect color. So I don't know, that might be another option. As far as projects, I have a couple of projects that could fit for a ZeeZee purchase, but it kind of overlaps with the next vendor. So I'll go over the next vendor and then I'll kind of give what my potential plans would be for these two together. So Pigment Ply is a British hand-dyed yarn company, also really focused on the nature moody color. So pretty similar to ZeeZee in that aspect. And I would really like to pick up something from both of them. I don't have any, I'm not super familiar with like what bases she's going to be taking or colorways or things like that. She hasn't done much of an announcement quite yet. So I'm kind of leaving that up in the air, but I have 3 potential projects that I could distribute, that I could pick yarn from from ZeeZee's or Pigment Ply. So one being the Firth fingering weight sweater from Rebecca Clow. It is currently in testing. It should be released in the fall, but I really, really like this sweater in a fingering weight option. I think that's something that I would get a ton of use out of. So that would require 300 grams of fingering for my size. Another option is the Marigold Vest by Fable Knitwear. That one requires 300 grams of a DK weight. And then my third option is a beanie quantity. So I really like the Brownstone beanie by Tori Yu, mostly because you can get away with knitting a full beanie with 100 grams of fingering weight yarn without having to, you know, crack into the second ball of yarn, which is the kind of like the annoying part of beanies. So 300 gram option, 300 gram option, and 100 gram option. So we'll see if I find yarn for any of those projects. Moving on to the next vendor that I would like to take a look at is the Wandering Flock. So the Wandering Flock, I have a very specific base that I would like to pick up, and it is their, I feel like it's been really popular this summer, their cotton lino. So it is a really fun base out of 30% cotton, 30% mulberry silk, 20% linen, and 15% alpaca. So it is a sport weight yarn. I kind of was going back and forth between, you know, what would I use this yarn for? And I think it needs to be a summer top. I have a couple of options. First, I was thinking perhaps the Margot top by Gregoria Fibers. Then I was thinking maybe the Winnie top by Lily Kate Makes. And then I saw this on Sari Nordland's stories. She is currently in process of making the Laulu V-neck tee, kind of based off of her Laulu scarf. And this one just caught my eye. I really, really liked it. I think what I liked the most is that the edges, the sides of the body are stockinette, so it's really easy for me to add in the waist shaping that I like in my garments. So I think I really want to make the Laulu tee. And it is actually designed in cotton lino, which is what kind of got the clogs winding in my brain. You guys know what I'm trying to say. So that would require 2 skeins. I'm guesstimating 2 skeins of the cotton lino. So I really want to do that. I've seen their color lineup and I don't know, I'm just going to go for the vibes in person, but I really want to give that a shot. Another vendor that I would like to go to is Ballyhoura, which is a British wool vendor and also focuses a little bit more on the moody colors. I really want to pick up a skein for socks because British wool does tend to have more texture and more grip and more grit to it as opposed to a silky merino, and I just think that holds up beautifully for socks. I have a really nice BFL yarn, sock yarn that I'm really enjoying, so I would like to pick up another skein of British wool to make with socks, but I would kind of like to see what they have to offer. And then the next little category of vendors I'm going to call, you know, farm yarns. So there are a few, ranch specific farm sheep to needle type of brands that are going to be there. I have listed Happy Hounds Alpaca Ranch, Prado de Luna, San Juan Woolworks, and Wild Rose Sheep Farm. Those are the main ones that I saw. I'm kind of curious just to see what they will be offering. I'm kind of really hoping that they might have 50 gram skeins as opposed to 100 grams because I saw these colorwork mittens, or like fingerless mitts, by Media Peruana. Her name is Kristen Jungkook. And I thought these would be really cute because I will be having some blue scraps left over from the tank that I'm making to wear to flock. I'll talk about that in a podcast. But I think having the main, like the beige color, be a nice little farm yarn in a fingering weight, I think that would be really cute. So that one's kind of like not as pressing, I guess, but I would like to take a look and see if I do happen to find something for those mitts. There are a few more vendors that I, of course, want to stop by, but I have decided not to prioritize at this moment because, unfortunately, even with, saving for a few months and having a nicer budget, I can't buy everything. So compromises have to be made. First of which is Explore Knits and Fibers. I really like Explore Knits and Fibers. I have a skein from them over here, and this one is also from them. At first I wanted to pick up some of their linen sock if they do happen to take some. But if you remember, I mentioned the Alice yarn from Durham Natura, and the composition is very, very similar. The Explorer version has 20% linen, and the Alice from Durham Natura has 25%. So I'm kind of curious. I would rather try the new base from Durham Natura as opposed to repurchase the same base. So I'm still going to stop by Explore Knits and Fiber, but I don't have anything, on my list to get from them. And then I have two more brands that I'm going to kind of put as market research. The first of which being Wooldreamers. So Wooldreamers is a commercial brand. It is a Spanish yarn. It's really enticing because they have more of the commercial price point of closer to about $20 for 100 grams as opposed to $30 for 100 grams. I'm really, really intrigued to take a look at their Manchalopes. I might get some, I might not. Depends on how much money is left in the budget. We will see. But that's one of the things that, because it's commercial, I can, purchase it maybe the following month or in a couple of months once, spreading out my purchases a little bit more. But it would be really nice to take a look at the yarn and feel the yarn in person and get to see the colors and things like that. So I'm intrigued about their Manchalopes, and I'm also intrigued about their Saona, which is a 50% cotton, 50% wool. So that's another yarn that I want to take a look at from them. And the last yarn vendor that I have on my radar is the Ritual Dyes, is it? Yes, Ritual Dyes. So specifically from them, I really want to take a look at their Undine. I thought it was pronounced Undine, but then I heard another podcaster say it was not Undine, it was Undine. I was like, okay, Undine it is. I want to take a look at their fingering weight, which that yarn is a cotton linen blend. Let me see if I have the percentages. I don't think I do actually. Well, it is a cotton linen blend. I don't remember what the ratio is for it. But again, that's another yarn that they do have it available on their website. It's not like, a pre-order type of yarn. So if I am running tight on budget, I will leave that purchase for later, but I do want to do my research and take a look at that specific yarn base from them. So those are the yarn vendors. There are a couple other vendors that I also want to include. So I'm going to start with buttons. There will be a vintage button vendor. It is under the name of Textile Division Buttons. So I kind of just made a little list of projects that I want to do in the upcoming year or so that I'm pretty solid on, that include buttons, and I wrote down how many buttons is needed for the project and how many millimeters the button should be. So I have no idea what her offerings might be, but I'll kind of take a look around, and if I can find buttons for maybe 2, 3, I don't know, whatever, depending on whatever I find, that will be great. So I did make note of that. I also have no idea how much to expect to pay for buttons. So if you know more about the button industry, I guess, let me know, because I'm not well versed with buttons quite yet. Another vendor that I want to pick something up from is Corse and Whale Tea. So it is a tea and wine company catered toward knitters, which I do not think they will have any of their wine there. I think it'll be just the tea, but I am a big tea drinker in the cooler months. So I want to pick up a tin of their tea. It will be retailing for $13 if they have the same pricing that they do on their website. So I took a look at their teas, and I think it was the Ceylon tea that I'm interested in. But anyways, I want to pick up a tin of tea. Another vendor is Woolies Fiber Art. So I have an 8-year-old son, and my parents will be taking care of him so that I can go on this girls trip, which is incredibly generous and kind of them. My birthday was last month, and they were like, well, what would you like for your birthday? I was like, please just take care of my child for a couple of days so I can go on this trip. And of course they absolutely said yes. So anyways, for my son, Woolies has like these cute little felted little figurines. I want to pick up a little figurine for my son because he has a shelf where he puts up his Legos and like his builds and stuff like that. And I think like a little woolly memento would be really cute on his shelf. So there will be 2 vendors that will be focusing on like lanolin type products, soaps, balms, wool washes, that sort of jazz. Herd Supply and Woolin Co, I believe those are the 2. I would really like to pick up some sort of like lanolin balm for my parents, just a little memento from my trip for them. So I want to take a look at what they will be offering. And I want to say that those are all of the vendors that I have on my list for now. So a good little variety of different things going on. And then next, I just want to kind of go over my pattern library. I kind of went over most of my plans in tandem, most of my pattern library, I guess, in tandem with the vendors. There are just a couple more that I would probably keep in mind in case I find, you know, an appropriate yarn. One is the Ballyhoura Tea by Marzena Kolaksek. This one I think would be really nice for the Ritual Dyes Undine, which is a fingering weight plant-based yarn. I think that would be a really good one for it if I end up picking up the Undine yarn. Other things that I have in mind, I think the flutter butt shirt from Jessie May Designs is also a good option. I'm trying to think of like smaller projects that will, you know, not take up as much yarn, because hand-dyed yarn is pricey, and I would rather be able to pick a couple of skeins from different vendors as opposed to just one big quantity from a single vendor. I want to spread the love. So I'm trying to think of like smaller projects. I think the flutter butt shirt would be a really cute one to have in mind. Another one is, this one might be a bit of a stretch, but I think the Oxford jumper by Fable Knitwear would be really cool for the Manchalopes by Wooldreamer. I'm not sure if like both strands held together or perhaps one strand of the Manchalopes with a silk mohair that I would purchase at a different time. So that is an option. Those are the main ones that I have. I did mention quite a few patterns. The Kerr sweater, the Lyra Bird cardigan, the Kathy cardigan, the Velvet Mirror cowl, the Firth sweater, the Dusame cardigan, the Marigold vest, the Brownstone beanie. So I have quite a few different projects that'll have like on speed dial, if we put it that way, to kind of pick from. But I also am pretty familiar with like what a project quantity is for me. For example, a fingering weight sweater for me is about 300 grams. A topper, a tee, a tank situation, that's about 200 grams of fingering. I usually like to stick to fingering, maybe a sport weight, like the cotton lino wool is a sport weight. But I think fingering just provides the most amount of flexibility for me. I live in a warm climate, so fingering weight garments get a lot more use from me. And if I want to later hold it double or pair it with a mohair, I just think fingering has a lot of flexibility, so I like to stick to that as much as I can. But I think that those are my main plans. So please tell me, is this excessive? Am I overthinking this too much? Are you going to flock? please let me know. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments and hopefully get to see some of you guys at Flock. This was a lot of fun to put together, and it makes me really excited to know it is almost here. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for choosing to spend a little bit of your time with me. Hopefully you found my yapping somewhat entertaining for this past little while, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.